Jeez, you already know what it is. Myself, Unafa Axel, aka Omega Axel, back once again, putting it in the ancestors' work. What's good? Wagwan. What's going down for the live and locked in fam? First thing I have to say again is a big black African heart-filled thank you to each and every single one of you tuned in live and direct right about now. And I have to hail up every single one of the patrons because if it wasn't for you, of course, we wouldn't be here kicking the info right about now. Before we even get into today's presentation, I have to thank again the patrons for their patience this month. This month has been very, very, very active. For those of you who follow me on social media, you already know that I've been engaged and involved quite heavily in the international arrangement for over 1,000 students, and it's nearly 2,000 students actually, to go and see Black Panther. Okay. The project has been a massive success. It is called We Will Rise in Wakanda. It comes with a big 6-part lesson plan and workshop that we've created with a team of international teachers. In fact, I'll actually just put the link to all of the, with all the information to the We Will Rise in Wakanda project in the bio to this video. But yeah, the reason why I haven't been able to put so much attention into the Patreon and kicking so much info as normal is because I've been focused on actually putting on some work or putting in some work on the ground. So my apologies. And I created this presentation over the course of the last couple of days, specifically with you guys in mind on the basis I know I've kind of abandoned you, and my apologies. So today we're going to cover one brief African history, okay, from 200,000 BCE to today. And before we even go into that, because I've been so busy, I haven't had the opportunities to promote and plug and basically ensure that I'm looking after myself and that things are kind of taking over as per usual. And so before I go in, I want to talk to you a little bit about, of course, my book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, with complete proof, celebrating Black excellence, a tribute to J.A. Rogers. Basically, the book has been out for a couple of months now. The book came out in December and it has done fantastically well, even though I haven't had the opportunities and time to promote it as well as I wish I was able to. But so far, I've had a profound impact on very tight-knit homeschooling communities. So I've had people been able to, pardon me, build entire kind of workshops around the book and the content that's in the book, and I've been able to kind of work alongside them to help make sure that that happens. So the book essentially is, of course, 100 amazing facts about Black African Caribbean people that you might not know. Now, for me personally, the inspiration and motivation behind doing this book is because J.A. Rogers, Joel Augustus Rogers, actually did this work 84 years ago. Okay, he produced 100 amazing facts about Black African Caribbean people from all across the world, and he did that as to serve as a middle finger to this white inferiority complex that was now global, of course. And he wanted to say, well, listen, you're calling us Negro as if it's to be, as if it's some derogatory term, when the fact of the matter is, Negro proves to be one of the most ancient words that you can call an African person. So through the, linguistic transmutation of the definition of the word Negro, Black people now feel a type of way addressing each other as Negro, or even hearing the word, or even having a conversation about the word Negro. So J.A. Rogers kind of did this to help bring back the pride and cultural, traditional pride, ultimately, yeah. And I realized that 84 years on, that many of my brothers and sisters didn't know much of the basic information that Joel Augustus Rogers was putting out all of them years ago. So I felt like it was my duty and my responsibility to kind of put in a little bit of work, put in a little bit of research, and bring a new 100 facts to the forefront of the Black African community so that we have additional things to be proud of, because it seems like all we're allowed to be successful in is the entertainment industry or the sports industry or the music industry or something like that. And you and I both know that we're better than that. Not better than that as if to say that's not good. But we are much more than that. We are academics, we are scientists, we are doctors, we are physicians, we are inventors, we are explorationists. Is that the right word? Explorationists? Explorers. Okay? We are all of these great things. In fact, if anything, we are the totality of excellence. Okay? We are the original standard, and therefore we need to be reminded of that, because for the last 450, circa 500 years, we have been put in this position. In fact, it's even longer than that, because it's 1,000 years. Okay, it's because we're talking about, the trans-Saharan slave trade as well, and the oppression that brought about. But ultimately, the point that I'm making is we are in a position where we need to be rebuilding and reaffirming in our minds, because a positive reality begins with a positive mentality. And the images that we are relying on to empower us at the moment are created with intent to keep people at a certain position. Let's say that. So if you are interested in the book, please go to ancestorswork.com. The link is right there down there. You'll be able to see that. But I'm sure if you're one of our peoples and you're watching this video, you'll be able to holler at me and reach out, and I'll be able to hook you up. So as I said, okay, today's presentation is called pardon, I can't even remember what my presentation is called. Today's presentation, okay, is called One Brief African History. And the reason that I decided to do this is because ultimately we're in a position where most people don't have the correct chronological understanding. But before we do that, as with any of my events, with my live streams, with the presentations, before we do that, we have to hail up and pay respects to the ancestors, because without these people that we're looking at here, and of course there's a great many more, we wouldn't be in this position where we're able to sit down and engage in these types of conversations and research down these certain types of paths. So for me, you consider T'Challa a fictional character to be your hero, or Clark Kent to be your hero, or Peter Parker to be your hero. I consider these people, yes, they're my heroes. Yeah. In fact, looking at the list here, a great many of them were taken out. But what I want you to do, wherever you are, wherever you are listening to this right now, I hope you feel comfortable enough to partake in this, because this is a little ritual thing that we will be doing, or we have always been doing if you've watched any of my presentations. But after one of these names, we are going to hail up Ashe. Okay? Ashe means and so it was, or and so it will be, in the West African language of the Akan people. Okay? Now, the reason that we do this is because immortality is something that can be obtained. And usually when I start discussing this, people think, this guy has lost his mind. What's he talking about? But when we think of characters like Jesus, Allah, Buddha, Shiva, Krishna, all of these, spiritual characters, whether we subscribe to them being real or not, the reason that they're still spoken about or they're still remembered is because they remain in the hearts and minds of people. So if it can work for them to keep them alive, why can't it work for our heroes, the people we can see who have provably laid the bricks in the path of our continuation going forward? So we are going to start with Dr. Joseph Ben Yochanan, Ashe. Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, Ashe. Malik El Had Shabazz, aka by any means Malcolm X, Ashe. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Ashe. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ashe. Dr. John Henry Clark, Ashe. The Most Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Ashe. Dr. Chancellor Williams, Ashe. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, Ashe. Carter G. Woodson, Ashe. Joel Augustus Rogers, Ashe. Alfonso Bowman, aka Dr. Sabi, Ashe. The powerhouse sister, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, Ashe. George G.M. James, Ashe. And of course, the unapologetic Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Ashe. We have Ya Asante Wa, Ashe. We have the Ahosi Warriors, Ashe. Thomas Sankara, Ashe. Amina the Queen of Zazu, Ashe. Steve Biko, Ashe. Kwame Nkrumah, Ashe. Tupac Amaru Shakur, Ashe. Queen Tai, Ashe. Duty Bookman, Ashe. Patrice Lumumba, Ashe. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Ashe. Toussaint L'Ouverture, Ashe. And of course, Robert Nesta Marley, aka Bob Marley, Ashe. So peace, powers, Uncle Josh, Seneb, She'emho, Tet, rest in peace, and all of them thing there to the ancestors. Thank you for your great works. May we continue in the same vein. So, as I said, oh, there is one last thing. Let me just do some pre-session shout outs real quick. I have to hail up my sister Binti Kahaya over at New Gold Auras, because whenever I need sorting out, whenever I need looking after, when it comes down to the Kemetic Joy El Re, New Gold Auras has got me hooked up. Now, she doesn't just cater to the mandem, she also caters to the sisters. You can see down there, so she has the body chains, the anklets, the necklaces, this, that, and the third, the rings. But you see the two pictures in the thing there? They're my pictures there. You know, I took her products to Egypt with me. Yeah, I took them everywhere because I believe that what she does is just like Baba Haru Ankh Shamaj. She passes on joy in the symbology that she puts in, and the energy that she puts into her work. So I've always supported her, and I will continue to support her, and I recommend that you guys go out there and support her. Next, I have to holler out and shout out and big up my brother down at the wellness bar in St. Albans. Okay, so when you actually wake up, when you really wake up, you'll realize that your body is the temple, that all of the holy scriptures, whether it's the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, all of these different things there, they've all been telling you that your body is the temple. Okay, and it requires a little bit of TLC to keep it in shape. So when it comes to personal training, there are very few people better than my brother Adam. He represents the Wellness Bar. It's down in St. Albans. So if you're in the area and you need that little motivational push, give him a shout, because he will get you hooked up. Tell him that I sent you, and he'll probably make you do an extra 10 laps or an extra 10 squats, but it's all for your greater good. Anyway, today's presentation, let's get it in with the mission objective. So as I said, the presentation is called A One Brief History of Africa. And ultimately, realistically speaking, there is no one quick way to cover African history. Okay, it goes so far back that being able to put our minds in the correct perspective can actually become very difficult. So today we're just going to make one brief overview of African history. We're going to look at what happened, and I'm also going to tell you where it is that you can study more and find out more information. So ultimately, we're able to kind of, basically, this is not intended to be super information heavy. Okay, it's mainly here as a chronological reference to help you understand exactly what Mutabaruka said when he meant, or what he meant when he said that slavery is not African history. Slavery interrupted African history. So today we're going to cover the social development on the continent. We're going to talk about the application of complex thought and different sciences, and we're going to talk about briefly the different rises and falls of kingdoms, economies, and different arts. So, where do we begin? Africa is known as the cradle of civilization, but the true meaning of the significance of what that really means is usually overlooked. Civilization doesn't just mean where the first man and woman was found. It's the creation of liberal arts, so that's things like reading, writing, mathematics, medicine. It's the organization and development of information. It's the things like invention, it's innovation, and it is the origin of social cohesion, government, and diplomacy. So when we're talking about the origins of advanced civilization, we are talking about Africa, and more specifically, when we're talking geospecifically, we're talking about Kemet. Now, it is often referred to as the mouthpiece of Africa, probably because Kemet was the cultural expression of the total African experience. Okay, so we not only have people kind of coming from up south, bringing all of their wisdom, their science, their traditions, but we also have people coming from the west and from the central regions of Africa to kind of congregate and to kind of build up this advanced civilization that we see as Kemet. But ultimately, it comes together, as I said, to become one of the most advanced and most influential civilizations recorded to ever exist. And a lot of what went into Kemet, as we just said, a lot of what makes it so awe-inspiring were products of thousands of years of development all over the continent. So just as an example there, You can see Naptoplier at the bottom of the screen there, which is the rock formations which are astrologically aligned. And you can also see the Medu Necha, aka the hieroglyphs, which, of course, when ancient Kemet came into formation and foundation, as we'll discuss, was already fully developed. So where did that come from? Anyway, the first provable humans. That's 198,000 BCE, before the Common Era. That's 200,000 years ago. Now, although we know that the African origin has no provable exact beginning, we can prove as a fact that we have been here for a minimum of 195 to 200,000 years, and that proof comes with the discovery of the remains of the first anatomically modern human beings, which are found actually all throughout Africa. Now, the specific remains which we found, which are the oldest, are the Omo remains, which were found in 1967 in the Ethiopian Kibish Mountains, and they have been dated, as I said, to circa 195,000 years, making them the earliest human remains ever found, and that was reported in Science Daily in 2005 on the 28th of February. Now, Professor Clark Howell from the University of Berkeley said about these remains that these fossils are unmistakably non-Neanderthal, and they show that some modern humans had evolved in Africa long before European Neanderthals had disappeared. They demonstrate conclusively that there had never been a Neanderthal stage in human evolution. So what he's saying is that African people were never Neanderthals. The first organized fishing communities, 98,000 BCE, before the Common Era, 100,000 years ago. Now, 100,000 to 90,000 years ago, in the Katanga region of the Congo Kingdom, we start to see the first fishing-based communities popping up and spreading out all over the continent, where we find archaeological remains, particularly in the south and in the southern regions. Now, the sites have been uncovered and studied, and they were littered with catfish bones, and there were harpoons that were the relative size to catch adult catfish, giving us the understanding of an organized civilization of people. Now, if you look at the bottom right of the screen, you'll see the Katanga harpoon point, and the caption that I got from Wikipedia says that humans in Central Africa used some of the earliest barb points, like this harpoon point, to spear huge prehistoric catfish weighing as much as 68 kilograms or 150 pounds, enough to feed 80 people for 2 days. Later humans used harpoons to hunt large, fast marine mammals. And the quote did actually go on to say that people of modern day civilizations still use similar harpoon-shaped points. The archaeological site coincides with the range of the Ife pygmies who are found in the Congo region, which have been shown by mitochondrial DNA analysis to be of extremely ancient and distinct lineage, which we already know from our basic studies of African ethnography and of anthropology, that the pygmy people are some of the most ancient people on the planet. And we don't like typically using and applying the term and the label ancient, but at this case here, with the correct analysis, we know that these genuinely are an ancient people. Advanced mining and material mining. Advanced mineral and material mining, should I say, 41,000 BCE before Common Era, which is 43,000 years ago. So since at least 43,000 years ago, Africans in modern-day Swaziland were involved in mining and the purification of semi-precious metals, with the estimations being made by modern scholars that suggest that millions of tons have been extracted. Now, the area is called Lion Cavern, and it's in Swaziland, where they have discovered no less than 30,000 artifacts discovered. Okay, and they range from finished products to mining tools to even remains of people who worked on and are in and around the site. So what you can actually see there in the middle is some iron ore or hematite, something that they were extracting from the area, and you can see underneath that's actually the area, and to the right of that is the actual cavern. The Lumumba bone, 33,000 BCE, before Common Era. 35,000 years ago. So around 35,000 years ago, our ancestors were already developing methods of recording information that shows signs of advanced thought. The Lumumba bone, found in the Lumumba Mountains of Swaziland, is a bone of a baboon with etchings carved into them that seem to trace the lunar/menstrual cycle. Now, the Lumumba bone, which is on the left, is far older than the Ashango bone, which is on the right, which is often confused for. And basically, what I wanted to point out is, do you understand how intelligent you have to be able to track the lunar cycle? Do you know what that requires? Anyway, there's much speculation about the Lumumba bone and the Ashango bone. Me personally, I haven't done enough research in there to be able to conclude or provide any decent analysis of my own. However, we're finding it, or scientists are finding it difficult to pin an accurate functional meaning for the carvings on both of the bones. So some people speculate that they're mathematical calculations, which you can find there at the bottom, so you can take your screenshot. But Alexander Marshak examined the Ashango bone microscopically and concluded that it may represent a 6-month lunar calendar. And Judy Robinson actually countered his argument, saying that he overinterpreted it. But Claudia Zavlatsky has suggested that this may indicate that the creator of the tool was a woman tracking the lunar phases in relation to her menstrual cycle. Now, I personally believe that with my understanding and just my general knowledge of African civilizations and cultures and people, that is what I would tend to lean with. But of course, like I said, I need to do more research into it to be able to find out. Hunting, gathering, fishing, trading equals thriving. Alright, 15,000 BCE, before the Common Era, 15,000 years ago, or 17,000 years ago actually. But it's important to note that 17,000 to 15,000 years ago, the continent of Africa had a totally different climate and thus a totally different look. The now desertous region of the north, central and east of Africa, including the Sahara, were fertile plains. Now, nomadic hunter-gatherer based communities began becoming less interested and concerned in tracking and migrating herds around 15 to 12,000 years ago, and they began congregating around the rivers and lake regions in Lucania Hill and in the Wadi Kabanya area of Egypt, domesticating animals and further developing their agricultural process. So if you look to the right of the screen at the big map, firstly, Aswan is where Wadi Kabanya would be today, and Lucania Hills is still called Lucania Hills. And these are the first sites of animal domestication that we're seeing. Okay, so animals being corralled and, basically farmed like they are today. But the first part I mentioned about the continent being different, if you look to the left hand of the screen, probably where I should have started, is around 10,000 years ago, the continent was much more luscious. It was much more fertile. So we were seeing hunter-gatherers up and down the entire continent. But then what happened was they began to twig on that they could fish. They twigged on that, animals were attracted to the water. Therefore, animals would come to them. Okay, and then as time went on, the continent dried out. It required them to look into different areas. And circa 5,000, 7,000 years ago, when the areas like the Sahara were dried out, the people went in two directions. They went southwest down to the Niger Benue River area, or they went east to the Nile River. But that's a different conversation. We'll talk about that a different day. What came first, Kemet or the mummy? 7,500 BCE, before Common Era, or circa 9,500 years ago, the first signs of spirituality, ritualistic ceremonial practices, and understanding of advanced sciences are dated to around 9,500 years ago, with the finding of the Yuan Mahigag, or Mahijid, should I say, mummy, which is found in modern-day Libya. Now, contrary to the popular belief, the first evidence of mummification, which is found in first evidence of mummification is not found in ancient Egypt, but in the lands of their westerly neighbours, Libya. The Uan Ma'ajij is an excavation site where the famed Tashwanat mummy was found in 1958, and testing revealed that the remains date back as far back as 5,600 years, predating the mummies of ancient Kemet. Imagine that. The first known king. Now, Contrary to general acceptance and in defiance of biased scholarship that aims to marginalize African history, the unification and formation of ancient Kemet, which happened around 8,000 years ago, after the rise to the power of a southern ruler called Menes, who also goes by the name of Narmer. Now, this is the first kingship known to history, not just in Africa, not just in Kemet, okay, but the entire world. And it would go on to play an integral role as an example for excellence in its totality and becoming the real jewel of contemporary Africa. Okay, what you can see at the bottom is what's called the Narmer palette that is found in the Cairo Museum, and ultimately it tells the story of how Narmer comes from the south to smite his northern enemy and unite the two lands and declare himself the Nasut Biti, which means the Lord of the Two Lands. Okay, and you can actually see to the right, that's a picture of Narmer, which is a sculpture which is found in the Petrie Museum down in London. That's actually my picture. You can try Google that, you won't find it nowhere. But you can see from the remainders of what you can see there on his, his nose, very big nose, big lips. That's an African man. Recalibrate the timeline. 6000 BCE before Common Era, aka 8,000 years ago. Now, it is being uncovered that the monuments thought to have been built in the 3rd millennia BCE were actually built much earlier, as far as 7,000 years or even 8,000 years. Now, irrespective of the current status on an agreeable date, there is irrefutable evidence to prove that the ancient Hapi or Nile civilizations were the progenitors, if not extremely familiar with the advanced sciences like astronomy, medicine, engineering, mathematics, etc., etc. So, for example, we know that not Robert Shockley, is it Bouvard? He has done, or is it Shockley? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I believe it's Martin Bouvard, but he has done some research into the Sphinx, or the Haru Emoketi, which is the Sphinx, and that suggests that because of the water erosion, it was actually built circa 7,500 to 10,000 years ago, not 4,005 or 5,000 years ago, like general history tries to tell us. We also have evidence now for pyramids in areas like Saqqara and Dashur with water damage, which suggests that they were built, even further back than we even first thought. So, there's a lot of work to be done on the ground from an unbiased perspective to actually pin an accurate date on just how far Africa or Kemet goes singularly, because we already know that areas like Kush pre-existed Kemet. We already know that kingdoms pre-existed Kemet, so that only pushes them further back. That doesn't disqualify or discredit any other African nation whatsoever. It just goes to show how devious, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th century scholarship really was. But the kingdoms of Kemet and Kush were considered to be the power and academic headquarters of the ancient world, and therefore nations would send their scholars and theologians, even their merchants, to learn and trade in Kemet or Kush. Now, this hastened the spread of advancements and innovations into other areas of Africa and even into the known world. Africa is popping circa 2000 BCE, before the Common Era, around 4,000 years ago. Because around 4,000 years ago, the concept of advanced civilization was a relatively synonymous concept across the continent. Intelligently designed fortified cities were found and have been excavated all over the northern regions of Africa. One such example is in Dar Tichwalata, which is in Mauritania, and other finds dating to this area uncover vast amounts of art in the Sahel and in the western areas, and particularly in the Nigeria areas. So the two picture examples that you can see there is that site in Dar Tichwalata in Mauritania, which was excavated, and it looks like it was a beautiful site. Imagine that in its prime. It would have had bustling life and colours and this, that, and the third. Kenya's Nata Playa, 1000 BCE, circa 3,000 years ago. Another example of ancient African interpretation and understanding of advanced concepts is found in Namuratonga, okay, which is the astro or archaeological, the archaeoastrological, the archaeoastronomical evidence of a lunar calendar found on the west bank side of Lake Turkana, which is in Kenya. So around 3,000 years ago, this site, which contains 19 basalt pillars in total, are astrologically aligned with 7 different star signs, including Triangulum, Pleiades, Bellatrix, Aldebaran, Central Orion, Saiph, and Sirius. So for the fact that the ancestors were able to correctly align that, that is a genius, unreplicable by 99% of the population of the world today. Africa's the center of the world's attention, just like it is today, sadly for the wrong reasons. So 500 BCE, before the Common Era, 1,500 to 2,000 years ago. Now, 1,500 years ago, elaborate and expansive trade economies thrived all throughout the north, central, and the west of Africa that were provably connected to India, Asia, Europe, and even the Americas. In Ile-Ife, which is the Yoruba city of Nigeria, glass was being manufactured on a commercial scale like champagne was to France. Let me say that again. In Ile-Ife, the Yoruba city of Nigeria, glass was being manufactured on a commercial scale like champagne was to fucking France. That's a madness. Now, around all of these trade economies were built major kingdoms which were uncompromising, such as Mali, Mauritania, Songhai, Ouagadougou, Al-Morocco, Benin, Kanem, Igbo, Aribo, Edo, Woloyo, Mbame, Sahu. Arab scholars of this age actually describe Ghanaian or Ouagadougou kings as some of the richest people in the world, with surplus reserves of salt, spices, gold, and other semi-precious metals. So if you look across the bottom there, you will actually see the Benin brasses, which were hightailed, pirated, and hijacked by the British colonial regime, and they still have them there today. Moors in Europe. All right, okay, 500 CE, the Common Era, 1,500 years ago. Oh wow, that means I made a mistake before. I didn't mean 1,500 years ago. I meant 2,500 years ago here. But yes, 500 CE, or circa 711 actually, to 1,500 years ago. North Africans entered into Europe through Gibraltar and began a 700-year conquest that re-civilized, reshaped, and redefined Hispaniola. Now, the history of Black African Caribbean people begins to descend into a forced darkness in the 1500s, which was fueled and motivated by a white inferiority complex, which has gone on to create the current social political atmosphere of today. So real quick, just summarizing, the Moors in Europe and just how important the effect on what they did. I mean, just look at the bottom 2 photos, for example. The bottom right photo, that's Gibraltar Castle. They built that. They did that. That's still there standing today. A national treasure, something that generates Gibraltar money on a monthly, daily, weekly basis. So they benefit in that way there. The bottom one is the Alhambra, if I remember correctly. I believe that's the Alhambra. Again, something utilized to make money for them on a day-to-day basis. The Moors not only helped re-civilize the area, and by re-civilizing, I mean helping pull them out of what was considered to be a dark age. They introduced hygiene into the area and, destroyed the plague, which had wiped out, I think it was something like 60 to 75% of the population, millions and millions and millions and millions of people. They brought economic stability to the area. For example, Spain still has a bustling, thriving economy based around oranges. The oranges were introduced by the Moors. Okay. But yeah, it's in 1492 with the expulsion of the Moriscos. That, in fact, let me just make this point clear. Okay. People always tend to believe, and this is straight up just down to misinformation. People always think that in the 1500s that Europeans had no idea what was going on in Africa, bearing in mind that they'd been under Moorish control in Europe for 700 years. So they fully well knew what was going on in Africa. They knew that there was excellence there. So in 1492, when they kicked the Moors, or finally beat the Moors and kicked them out of Spain, they knew what they were doing, and they knew where they were going next, and they knew that they never wanted to be under Moorish or African rule again, and that's why they so aggressively look to maintain their control of power on a global level. Oh, we'll skip back. But yeah, where to learn more? A lot of the information which we spoke about today, albeit isn't heavily referenced, because as I said, this isn't going to be massively information heavy today. A lot of this information I can remember reading and picking up and getting from these books that we've listed here. So the first one, which I believe that people need to go out there and get, is How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and that's by the great ancestor Walter Rodney. We have Johnson de Graaf. What's his first name now? I can never remember his first name. But we have J.C. de Graaf Johnson's African Glory. It's a fantastic book. The story of the vanquished Negro civilizations. We have Sheikh Anta Diop's The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. If you haven't read that, you're lacking. We also have Pre-Colonial Black Africa, one of my favorite books, one of the books that I always recommend people to get again. Then we have Baba Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan's Africa, the Mother of Western Civilization. Then we have the UK's very own Robin Walker's When We Ruled. A fantastic book. It is a bit pricey, but the truth is so much work and so much effort went into that book that it's genuinely worth every single penny. And it's a thick book too. I always recommend you to get the latest version of it as well, because I believe he continually updates it. Next, we have The Destruction of Black Civilization, a fantastic book by Chancellor Williams. Great scholar, put in a lot of work into that book. A lot of the information we know that we're able to find better sources for, or have a better, understanding of today, but it still serves as a rudimentary works for you to get your teeth into. And the last book, one that not many people usually hear of, is Wonderful Ethiopians of Ancient Kushite Empire. And that's by Drusilla Junji Houston. Fantastic book. Dope read. Really enjoyed that because it helped me to understand a perspective of the ancient world that I was unable to, I didn't have before. And there was no teachers out there giving it to me in that way. So I really, really enjoyed that. So yes, thank you for tuning in. As I said, I wanted to make this a relatively small video in comparison to what I normally do, because I can be out here talking for days, weeks, hours, months, and years. So thank you for tuning in. Peace, and more powers. Uncle Joss and Neb, Sha'em Hotep, go in peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe, tell your mom, dad, auntie, sister, and anybody who cares to listen. Boom.